Welcome to Mindful Moments. Nourish your mind on the go. We leverage the power of AI so you can explore big ideas anytime, anywhere. Today, we're diving into the world of misbelief, guided by Dan Ariely's book, Misbelief: What Makes Rational People Believe Irrational Things.
Yeah, so in this deep dive, we're going to try to understand this question of, why seemingly rational people believe things that seem demonstrably false.
And Ariely himself, he's a well-respected behavioral economist.
Yeah.
But during the COVID pandemic, he became the target of these really strange accusations from conspiracy theorists.
These weren't just sort of run-of-the-mill conspiracy theories.
Right.
These were people who are claiming that he was, part of a government plot, to even going so far as to suggest that he wanted to depopulate the world because of injuries that he had sustained in a fire many years earlier.
It's such a strange story. And what's so interesting is that Ariely uses this experience to kind of launch into this exploration of how any of us can be pulled into this world of misbelief.
Yeah.
And he really focuses on how stress plays a role in this.
Yeah, I mean, he talks about this concept of a funnel of misbelief.
Okay.
Which is this idea that unpredictable stress in particular creates this kind of cognitive bottleneck. And we, when we're under stress, we crave these simple explanations and we become much more vulnerable to misinformation.
It's like when you're just feeling overwhelmed and you'll grasp onto anything that seems to make sense.
Exactly.
Even if it's totally out there.
Exactly. And he gives this example of a woman named Jenny who was struggling with the mask mandates in her son's school.
Okay.
And, the stress of this situation combined with her sort of going online to look for answers led her down this rabbit hole of COVID conspiracies.
She was looking for control.
Yeah.
In a situation where it felt like there was no control.
Yeah, this is where this concept of learned helplessness comes in.
Sure.
When we feel like we lack control over events, especially stressful events,
right,
we're more likely to kind of grasp at these simple explanations, and they're often inaccurate, right? And the research is very clear that stress actually depletes our mental bandwidth. It makes us crave those easy answers.
So it makes us more susceptible.
Absolutely.
To misbelief.
Absolutely. And one of the things that Ariely observed is that very often these misbelievers, they fixate on villains.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like they need to have somebody to blame for their problems.
Okay.
He describes this woman, Eve, who actually came to him initially for some advice on a project.
Okay.
Later, she became convinced that Ariely was the mastermind behind the mask mandates in schools.
So finding a villain gives you that sense of control in a world that feels out of control.
Exactly. It's this kind of false sense of control. And what Ariely suggests is that this can actually become this kind of compulsive behavior, almost like an unhealthy coping mechanism.
Right.
And this brings us to the role of social media and cognitive biases in all of this.
Right. I mean, social media algorithms are practically designed to exploit those biases.
Yeah.
They feed us information that confirms our existing beliefs.
It creates these echo chambers of misinformation. It's as if we're surrounded by all these mirrors and all we see are our own distorted reflections of reality.
I remember the whole magnet theory.
Oh, yeah.
Ariely was actually asked to debunk this video that was going viral, showing people sticking metal objects to their bodies after being vaccinated.
Right. And this video, it used these anecdotal evidence, these appeals to authority to make this theory seem plausible.
And then there's this whole idea of biased search.
Yeah.
Where people think they're diligently researching.
Yeah.
But really they're just seeking out information that confirms what they already believe.
Yeah, he talks about this guy, Richard, who meticulously researched COVID and was convinced that he was uncovering the truth.
Right.
But he was actually just going deeper and deeper into this rabbit hole of his own bias.
It's like when you have a strong opinion about something and you only read articles that agree with you.
Exactly.
You're not really looking for truth. You're just trying to find more evidence.
You're just reinforcing your own bias.
Yeah.
And this is something that psychologists have studied for a long time, this concept of confirmation bias. There's this classic experiment called the Wyson selection task that shows that people are much more likely to try to confirm their beliefs than they are to try to disconfirm them.
And Ariely even admits that he kind of fell victim to this himself during a health scare.
Yeah.
He was researching cancer and, really went down this rabbit hole of confirmation bias.
Yeah, and this kind of gets at this idea of motivated reasoning, right?
Right.
That our desires and our fears can actually shape how we perceive the facts.
It's like our emotions are driving the bus.
Exactly. And then there's this whole issue of overconfidence.
Yeah.
There's research that shows that people with less knowledge about a subject are often the most confident in their judgments.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect in action.
Exactly. The less you know, the more you think you know.
Right. So we have the stress pushing us towards simple explanations. We have these villains giving us a false sense of control.
Right.
And then we have our own cognitive biases feeding us misinformation.
Right.
And then you add social dynamics to the mix.
Oh, yeah. Social circles can amplify and solidify these misbeliefs.
Right. It's like it becomes contagious within a certain group.
Like a virus.
Yeah.
And, think about the Asch conformity experiments, these classic experiments where they showed that people were willing to give the wrong answer.
Wow.
Just to fit in with a group.
So powerful.
Yeah. Social pressure is incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Ariely gives this example of this couple, Stacy and Ron, who started this media platform.
Right.
And it sort of inadvertently became this hub for COVID misinformation.
Right. And they were rejected by their previous social circles because of their beliefs.
So that isolation actually pushed them further into the world of misbelief.
Exactly. They found a new community that validated their conspiracy theories.
It's like classic cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
You face rejection for your beliefs, so you double down on them
Exactly.
to justify the social cost.
Exactly. And this is where things can get really dangerous.
Right.
Ariely talks about this nurse, Nadine, who started by just discouraging people from getting vaccines.
Okay.
And ended up claiming that they were part of a genocide plot.
Oh, wow.
So these misbeliefs, they have this tendency to escalate over time.
Yeah, it's like they have to keep raising the stakes to maintain that sense of belonging and identity.
Exactly. And, all of this, the stress, the villains, the biases, the social dynamics, it points to a much bigger issue, which is the erosion of trust in our society.
That's a huge problem.
It is. It's a huge problem.
I mean, that's like the foundation of our society is crumbling.
It's like the foundation is crumbling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ariely uses this really powerful analogy. He talks about, imagine discovering that your partner has been cheating on you for years.
Oh, wow.
That betrayal just shatters your trust. It makes you question everything.
Yeah, it makes sense. If you can't trust the people closest to you, who can you trust?
Right. And that's what's happening on a societal level.
Right.
We're losing trust in our institutions, in experts, and even in each other. And this creates this fertile ground for misbelief to flourish.
Right. So how do we deal with this? I mean, where do we go from here?
It's a tough question. It's really striking that Ariely himself grappled with this idea of just abandoning trust altogether.
Oh, right.
After his own experience with betrayal, he felt foolish, and his initial instinct was just to protect himself by never trusting anyone again.
I can understand that. I mean, a betrayal like that can make you question everything.
Exactly. But he recognized that, withdrawing from trust entirely would come at a significant social cost. So he did this kind of cost-benefit analysis.
Interesting.
And he realized that the benefits of trust, while they're often subtle, they're far-reaching.
So it's a risk worth taking, even though it opens you up to betrayal. Without trust, you lose collaboration.
Yeah.
You lose connection. You lose joy.
Exactly. And ultimately, he chose to believe that most people are fundamentally good, even if that left him open to being disappointed.
So this brings us back to that challenge of how do we deal with misbelievers in our own lives?
Yeah.
I mean, it can be so frustrating.
It is.
It can be emotionally draining.
Yeah, and then it's tempting to just dismiss them or cut them off.
Right.
But as Ariely points out, ostracizing them often backfires.
How so?
It pushes them deeper into their misbeliefs, and it strengthens those harmful social circles.
So how do we navigate those conversations without getting pulled into their distorted reality?
It's a tough question.
Yeah.
Ariely suggests that we start with empathy.
Okay.
Recognize that people often embrace these misbeliefs because they're hurting. Oh. They're stressed. They're searching for control in a world that feels chaotic. So instead of attacking their beliefs, try to understand the underlying emotional needs.
So connect with them on a human level, not try to win an argument.
Exactly. Find common ground. Listen without judgment. Acknowledge their intelligence and their good intentions, even if you disagree with their conclusions.
Create a space for dialogue, not a battleground.
Precisely. And sometimes the best way to counter a misbelief is not with facts.
Interesting.
But with a better story.
Okay.
A story that's compelling but grounded in reality.
And Ariely himself actually inadvertently sparked a conspiracy theory.
Oh, really?
When he jokingly suggested that the government replace birds with surveillance drones.
Oh.
It was satire. but it took on a life of its own. It was fueled by those same forces of misbelief that we've been talking about.
And it highlights the power of narratives.
Right.
We can use storytelling to promote critical thinking and empathy and trust.
So this whole deep dive has me thinking about, what are the tools that we can develop as individuals to navigate this landscape?
Yeah.
I mean, if the modern world makes us all susceptible to misbelief in some way, what are our defenses?
Yeah, Ariely offers some really valuable insights into this. And he talks about these, what he calls mental heaters and sweaters.
Mental heaters and sweaters?
Yeah, these are these cognitive strategies and habits that can protect us from misinformation.
So what are some examples of these mental heaters and sweaters?
Well, I think a good starting point is cultivating a healthy skepticism.
Okay.
Question. Assumptions look beyond the surface, consider multiple perspectives.
And recognizing our own biases.
Absolutely. We all have them.
Yeah.
Being aware of them can help prevent us from falling into those echo chambers of confirmation bias.
Right. And slowing down.
Yeah.
Being more deliberate with our information consumption.
Exactly. Take the time to read those in-depth articles, engage with nuanced perspectives, fact check before you share.
It's like being a mindful eater, but with information.
Exactly. Choosing a balanced informational diet instead of binging on junk food.
I like that.
And pay attention to how information makes you feel.
Oh, that's interesting.
Does it trigger anxiety or anger or outrage?
Okay. Or does it leave you feeling informed and empowered and curious?
So if you're feeling those really strong emotional reactions, that might be a red flag.
Exactly. It might be a sign that information is playing on our biases.
Right.
Rather than appealing to our reason.
Okay, so skepticism, bias, awareness, mindful information consumption. What else?
Well, building strong social support systems is crucial.
Okay.
Ariely talks about the importance of these secure attachments.
Okay.
These are the relationships that provide a sense of belonging and safety and resilience.
Right.
These connections can really help us weather the storms of stress and uncertainty.
Because when we feel isolated and disconnected, it's easier to fall prey to those narratives
Exactly.
that offer belonging, even if they're based on falsehoods.
Exactly. And then finally, cultivate intellectual humility.
Intellectual humility, yeah.
Be open to the possibility of being wrong.
Okay.
Acknowledge that your understanding is incomplete. Recognize that there's always more to learn.
So it's recognizing that knowledge is a journey, not a destination. Exactly. So skepticism, bias, awareness, mindful information consumption, emotional regulation, strong social connections, and intellectual humility. These are the mental heaters and sweaters that can help us.
That can protect us.
Protect us from misinformation.
It's a toolkit for navigating this complex world.
It is, but even with these tools, it's still a challenge.
It is.
Ariely doesn't pretend to have all the answers,
right?
But he does offer a message of hope.
Okay.
We've overcome countless challenges as a species.
Right.
And with a deeper understanding of misbelief, we can build a more resilient and connected and truthful world.
It's not just about protecting ourselves from misinformation. It's about engaging with those who have already embraced it.
It's true. It's tempting to just write off misbelievers as irrational or dangerous.
Right.
But that judgment only worsens the problem. It pushes them further into their echo chambers and makes them less receptive to different perspectives.
So how do we have those productive conversations with people who seem firmly entrenched in their misbeliefs? How do we break through those walls?
Yeah, it's not easy. We need to shift our mindset.
Yeah.
Instead of approaching these conversations as debates, see them as opportunities for connection and understanding and compassion.
I mean, their beliefs are often so deeply intertwined with their identity, their sense of purpose.
Exactly. So don't attack their beliefs directly.
Right.
Instead, try to understand the underlying needs that those beliefs are fulfilling.
Are they feeling scared? Are they feeling powerless, betrayed? Are they searching for control or meaning?
Exactly.
In a world that feels chaotic.
Once we understand those needs,
okay,
then we can start to engage with them in a more compassionate and productive way.
So it's about meeting them where they are,
acknowledging
their fears, and gently guiding them towards a more nuanced understanding.
And sometimes countering a misbelief is best done not with facts and logic, but with a better story.
Okay.
A story that resonates with their values, but is grounded in reality.
So true. And it's important to remember that changing those deeply held beliefs,
it takes time. It takes patience.
It does.
And sometimes, despite our best efforts, people may remain stuck.
Right.
But we shouldn't give up on them.
I agree.
Even if we can't change their minds, we can still maintain those human connections.
We're all in this together.
Exactly. Yeah, this brings us back to the importance of trust.
Okay.
If we want to combat misbelief, we need to rebuild trust in our institutions, in our experts, and in each other.
Ariely's book really drives home the point that trust isn't just this nice to have.
It's essential.
It's the bedrock
Yeah.
of a functioning society.
Without it, we're vulnerable to division and manipulation, and ultimately to misbelief.
Right. So how do we rebuild trust in a world where it seems increasingly scarce?
Yeah, that's the question that we'll explore in the final part of our deep dive into Dan Ariely's Misbelief.
I mean, rebuilding trust, it seems like such a monumental task.
It is.
Especially in this climate, where there's so much doubt and skepticism.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
Well, Ariely suggests that the first step is simply acknowledging the problem. We can't just sweep these breaches of trust under the rug or dismiss them as isolated incidents.
Right.
We need to be honest about the systemic factors that contribute to these breakdowns.
So instead of pointing fingers and placing blame, we should focus on understanding the root causes of this erosion of trust.
Exactly. And that involves holding institutions accountable.
Okay.
They need to demonstrate transparency in their actions, communicate clearly, and show a willingness to admit mistakes and make amends.
It seems like rebuilding trust requires a fundamental shift in how institutions operate.
It does. It's about moving away from this culture of secrecy and defensiveness.
Right.
And towards a culture of openness and accountability.
So transparency, accountability.
Yeah, and it also requires empowering individuals to speak up when they see something wrong.
That makes sense. I mean, if people feel safe reporting wrongdoing without fear of retribution, it could prevent abuses of power.
Right.
It could foster a more ethical environment.
Exactly. Creating a culture where whistleblowers are protected, not punished, can be a powerful tool for rebuilding trust from the ground up.
So it's not just about institutions, right?
No, it's not.
It's also about fostering that sense of community and shared values.
Absolutely. When we feel like we're part of something larger than ourselves, we're more likely to trust those around us, even if we don't agree on everything.
Okay.
And that sense of belonging, it creates this foundation of trust that can help us navigate disagreements and challenges in a more constructive way.
It's like remembering we're all on the same team.
Exactly.
Even if we have different perspectives.
Yeah.
Or approaches.
Rebuilding trust requires us to recognize our shared humanity.
Okay.
We need to embrace diversity of thought.
Okay.
Engage in respectful dialogue, even with those who hold different views.
It seems like Ariely's book is calling for a profound shift in how we relate to each other.
It is.
And to the world around us.
It's a call to move beyond fear and division and suspicion.
Okay.
And cultivate a more empathetic and connected and trust-based approach to navigating the complexities of modern life.
So this deep dive into misbelief, it's given us a lot to consider.
It has. It's been a really insightful exploration of the forces that drive misbelief, both within ourselves and in the wider world.
And it's given us some practical tools and strategies for navigating this challenging landscape.
Absolutely. We can develop those mental heaters and sweaters that help us resist misinformation and foster greater trust in our own lives and in our communities.
So if you're intrigued by these ideas and want to delve deeper into this fascinating world of misbelief, we highly recommend checking out Dan Ariely's book, Misbelief: What Makes Rational People Believe Irrational Things.
It's a great book.
And we have a link in the show notes where you can purchase a copy and support the show.
And if you enjoyed this episode,
yes, please subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends, and leave us a review. We appreciate your support.
Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and remember, knowledge is power, especially when it comes to understanding the complex workings of the human mind.